Are you enjoying Supervive but feeling a little lost as a beginner? Don't worry, I've been there too. What's poppin' everyone, it's your boy Levi, and I've got a beginner's guide on how to choose your main character in Supervive. In this video, we'll categorize all the hunters, so by the end of this video, you'll know exactly who you want to main and why. Once you've found that character that you super vibe with, you'll be ready to jump into the action and get to the fun parts of the game. Sound good? Then hit that subscribe button because there's a lot more Supervive beginner's guides coming your way. As a new player, the best characters to start out with are those that let you focus on learning the game without overcomplicated character mechanics. These characters have straightforward abilities and clear roles, making them perfect for beginners or anyone who wants a simpler, effective playstyle. Or if you're like me and you suffer from too much TikTok brain rot, you might like playing simpler characters to feel like you're pushing them to their full potential. The beginner-friendly hunters are Ghost, Shrike, Felix, and Aluna. Let's break down each one. For beginner fighters, I'd recommend Ghost and Shrike. Ghost is a ranged fighter with a versatile kit that allows for both aggressive and defensive plays, and to be honest, he's my go-to fighter when I'm playing the carry role. But he can also run in and play aggro, relying on his resetting dash for mobility. I have a soft spot for characters with reset abilities, so he's already a good choice in my book. Ghost also works great as a zoner, as he can hold long lines of sight with arrows, as well as section off a fight with his grenade and ultimate. Use Ghost in a pick comp, where you can pick off caught out enemies to create 4v3s before the fight begins. He's a great follow-up to long-range engage as he can capitalize with arrows, grenades, and ultimate. I don't want to talk too much about how each fighter fits into the meta because that will change in a few weeks, whereas this is a more evergreen video, but Amplifier Tech Blade Ghost right now feels incredibly good in an endgame circle standoff. He can basically fire off arrows without cooldown, poking down enemies, and being very oppressive. Next up is Shrike, and as a beginner, you'll probably have some choice words for playing against this character. Shrike is a pub stomper for new players when you first get into the game. She will pretty much always 2-tap you, but I fully believe that the better you get at this game, the easier she becomes to play against. Shrike is very good with a line of sight to your enemy, and plays especially well out in the open areas of the map. She's great at punishing opponents with quick, powerful bursts, but requires careful positioning due to limited effectiveness in cluttered areas. There's so many trees and structures to use this natural cover in a lot of instances to where you might find yourself limited with the character. Shrike's main strength is her ability to punish opponents with high damage left clicks, but because she has a laser sight to help you with aiming, you can always tell who she's going for. Shrikes and higher elos will learn to flick shot, so you can't tell who she's aiming at, but as a new player, you'll be likely staring down the barrel. She also has an obvious reload cadence to give her a window to play around. If enemies use their dash or find cover to bait out your shot, you'll be in a disadvantageous position. Shrike is best suited for peel comps with supportive teammates who can keep her alive during extended fights or can lock down enemies for her to hit her shot. Look to capitalize with her grenade knockback to left click combo. You can also use it to burn enemy dashes. For a frontline engager, we have Felix. Felix is a versatile frontline diver with really solid engage that sets teammates up well to follow up. As Felix, you'll be good at a little bit of everything and a solid jack of all trades character. He can engage, has decent tank durability with a shield, and deals constant AoE burning damage. However, his success depends on team follow-up, and he's not a 1v4 character. Having an AoE flamethrower as a weapon, Felix is very forgiving for new players. You're not crutched by how well you can aim. As long as you're in the general area of the enemy, they'll start burning down. You will have to worry about enemies spacing you out with range, but that's a much higher skill floor than simply just dodging a projectile. Felix has pretty good mobility options, sporting 2, albeit short dashes on his shift, and an ultimate that can get him out of most instances. Comboing your ult engage with your shockwave styled CC on your Q can be devastating for a team, especially if you hit all 4 players and gain a huge shield. However, I can't tell you how many times that an enemy Felix has ulted in, got a huge pull, and then we burned him down because he's too far ahead of his team. You'll want to pick him in a dive comp where his teammates can capitalize and get big engages to finish off enemies. And for a healer, we have Aluna. There's a consensus that Aluna is just the we have a healer at home version of Zeph, but I think she's more than that. While she's not as strong as Zeph, I wouldn't relegate her to the diet healer role just yet. Aluna's simple yet effective kit makes her ideal for beginners learning the support role. This bunny thrives in neutral fights where both teams are trading abilities. Her kit includes an AoE heal, single target healing ultimate that can resurrect Wisp from range. You can pick up her teammates' Wisps, allowing her to resurrect and rejoin the fight if enemies don't have a way of protecting them. Additionally, Aluna is also an escape master, having both a dash and an air dash that gets you away from enemies. However, she does lack the skill expression that Zeph has. Pick Aluna in a peel comp where you'll fight front to back and can heal up your teammates. Next up are the characters that have high value and do a lot of good even if it wasn't your intentional play. These characters stand out because they're a step above beginner friendly characters, offering a higher skill ceiling while remaining accessible for newer players with a low entry floor. Let's break down Bishop, Zeph, and Myth. First up is Bishop. Bishop is a ramp-up hunter whose strength grows as fights prolong. Her passive increases the damage and size of her left-click rockets on direct hits, while also reducing her shift cooldown. This creates opportunities to snowball fights, especially against clumped-up enemies where AoE rockets can deal substantially more damage. You want to ramp up with these at the beginning of a fight if you can. Bishop fits the unintentional tier because her left clicks do AoE damage. Hitting a team clumped up together means you're damaging everyone and getting more value out than single target abilities. Because these rockets have fall-off damage, you'll want to get close and in on your target, making it easier for direct hits. When you're in the middle of a fight, use your right-click punch to create space and wall stun enemies to follow up damage from teammates. Just make sure you don't whiff, as you have a punish mechanic of being slowed if you do. You can also punch whiffs into walls to eliminate them immediately. Bishop's ultimate excels in tight spaces, stunning enemies based on travel distance. Aim for flanks rather than a raw cast for better chances at success. Remember, hitting a target for a short stun is better than whiffing altogether into their backline and being focused down and dying immediately. Zeph is the character I consider to be my main, as he was the character I started with in Supervive. I know I didn't take my own advice with a beginner character, but forgive me. I'm a support main, and back in Alpha, Aluna was a much worse option than she is now, so I stuck with Zeph. Zeph is the epitome of a low skill floor, high skill ceiling character, having immense potential for skilled players. His point and click heal, tornado dash for mobility and repositioning, grenade for long range CC make him a valuable asset to any team. He also has access to one of the most fun ultimates in the game, providing heals, damage, knockback, and Wisp Resurrection, making him an excellent playmaker. He fits in the unintentional value section because of the sheer amount of utility that comes along with each ability. On Zeph, you'll find yourself in the backline despite your comp. He's very flexible in the sense that he can use his skills to peel, saving an ally with heals and tornadoes, or assist a diver with a grenade and ultimate. Zeph's heal passes in a line to its target, meaning that the target that you click on will be healed, but also any ally in its path. You'll want to look for lineups, of course, but on many occasions I've gotten a double heal when I was just trying to panic save one teammate. Zeph can also help look for picks by launching teammates into a fight to engage or to follow up. He's the perfect playmaker, but be careful which way you send your teammates. He's one of 3 hunters on this list that can screw your team over. Like I said before, this is the skill floor for Zeph. You can do all this as a new player who's getting the hang of the game. As you get better, you'll want to look into things like catapult combos with Celeste and Kingpin, bunny hopping to chase or escape from opponents, and optimizing his passive left clicks for maximum damage. Myth is a backline damage dealer who shines from long range. Her strength lies in positioning and accuracy, with her rain of arrows ability being a standout tool for zoning and damage. Use it to block escapes, deny gliders, and control team fights. Myth, in my opinion, is a step up from Ghost, so pick her when you get the hang of the game. As Myth, you'll also play the backline, and typically you'll always want an ally in front of you. There's not too many instances where you'll want to get up in someone's face. You've got hella range, so use it. Myth's survivability relies on her right clicks and her shift dash. Her right clicks push targets back, keeping them at range. If enemies use their dash to gap close onto you, they won't have anything left to recover the lost distance. The shift allows her to pass through walls for repositioning. You get 2 dashes, so as long as you're actually using them to roll away from danger, you're incredibly hard to jump on. Keep in mind your left click doesn't go through walls, so you can't just free hit from inside terrain. The shift can also be used to scout out an area that may seem dangerous. You'll notice that when you shift, a little ghost myth will appear where you went inside the wall. If your shift runs out and you're still inside a wall, you'll pop back out where your ghost was, regardless of if you were more than halfway through the mark of the wall. Myth's ultimate enhances her left clicks, making accuracy critical. While accessible to newer players, Myth requires practice to master her left click aim and maximize her damage potential. Now let's talk about her best ability, the rain of arrows. There's so many potential uses for this, and it's an even better ability as the game goes on. Use it in neutral to poke, use it on enemy divers to block their escape or re-entry after you self-peel, use it on your own divers to add some damage, use it over Abyss to protect an area from enemies gliding in, use it to section off a team fight. Typically enemies won't just want to walk through it, and by the end game, it hardly has a cooldown, likely that the effect will last longer than the cooldown itself. Myth fits this tier specifically on this ability. The reason I have Myth for a peel comp though is because to make the best use of her, you do have to land more left clicks than you Myth. Rain of arrows are a good tool, but they can't be your only source of damage. For a beginner player, I'd recommend playing her when you have a healer. I think she can be difficult to self-sustain on, so if you have a teammate looking at you, it can enable you to get to positions to hit better left clicks. Next up are the Miles Morales NPC characters because they do their own thing. These characters are Hudson, Jin, and Kingpin. The I'ma do my own thing characters follow a clear game plan, focusing on replicating specific specific actions in a fight. Their gameplay revolves around creating advantages for the team while focusing on their own strengths. Starting off with Hudson, I think he's the clearest objective of these three and is the easiest to execute on as well. Hudson does not want you to walk at his team, and he's very good at making it a tough approach in neutral. Equipped with a Gatling gun that never runs out of ammo, somehow, Hudson can simply just stand there and hold left click and you're forced to pick another angle to engage on. He also has barbed wire he can throw out that grounds, making it easier for his own team to engage and follow up on pick. His ultimate is an execute that grinds up enemies straight to their death box, ignoring becoming a wisp. He is an incredibly large threat when fighting in neutral. Like I said, I don't want to talk too much about the meta currently, but Hudson is very strong, especially against beginner players who aren't going to flank or have a snap engage on him on site. Typically, you're going to assess a fight first, thinking about where the other team may be so you don't get third party, or just not immediately pulling the trigger to make sure that everyone is on the same page. This benefits Hudson as it allows him to ramp up his Gatling gun with right mouse button, making it so his left clicks will pierce through targets. If you've been playing any amounts this last 2 weeks, you'll know this character has felt very oppressive, but he does have two glaring weaknesses. The first is that he has no poking ability. As scary as it looks having him spray bullets everywhere, if you stay outside the Gatling gun range, he can't really do anything to you. He can throw some barbed wire at you, I guess, but that's very easily avoidable. Second weakness is that this guy is so big and so slow outside of the shift glide, he's an easy target. Against Hudson teams, you'll want to engage on him if you can burn his shift. Leaving him untouched will allow him to shred through your team though. Look to use an ability to force out his dash and then commit hard on engaging on him. Next up is Jin, and I think Jin plays the most unique out of any character in Supervive. He's a true assassin where his play requires you to take out a threat on the opposing team even if it costs your life. Make sure you at least get your one. Jin doesn't really care what your own team is doing, he's going for that high priority target in a fight. Realistically, he loves when you have some divers to help support him on the backline, but regardless, he cares more about how the enemy can peel rather than if your own backline is getting dove. Look for flanks, bushes, trees, and any way to stealth onto your enemies. While Jin excels at killing a target very quickly, he does fall victim to what I call the assassin window. The assassin window is the window after an assassin gets a kill where they are at most vulnerable. Because their playstyle is very one for one, this is the time where you want to make sure you confirm that kill back onto him. When playing Jin, you'll want to use your decoy carefully and make sure you avoid getting killed during this window. Wait for your cooldowns to come back up and rejoin your team with the numbers for the advantage. Ideally with this character, you never want to take a fair fight, so do what you can to disrupt enemies. Kingpin for Supervive is the quintessential hook character to MOBAs. There's typically always one token hook character in any of these style games, and I'll admit, KP requires a little bit more team coordination than these other two to finish kills. But as an initiator, landing raw hooks is a real play, especially when making use of stealth cloak. KP can be very effective with a teammate like Zeph that can burn dashes with grenade, making it easier to land pulls, but catching an unexpected enemy off guard, especially through walls, can just create a huge advantage for your team. One of the largest benefits for getting hook kills is that it puts an enemy wisp and deathbox right at your team's feet. In the endgame scenarios where teams are fighting over the abyss, a spike might mean that the deathbox goes to a safer location. However, a pulls kill can assure that an enemy team will need a beacon or a crown, or just have to opt into a 4v3. KP's hook though isn't just an offensive threat. If a teammate is caught in a bad position or gets down, KP can hook that teammate or a wisp and pull them back to safety. Despite being fairly straightforward, I have him as medium difficulty. Because his hook can hit teammates, he's the second character on this list that can really screw his team over. While his is the least detrimental to the three, if your ally has an angle to engage and you pull at the same time, and they're flying in there on a snap engage and you pull them back on accident, not only do you kill the engage, but your hook's also down on cooldown too. I mentioned stealth earlier with KP, and yes, you can make good use of stealth with any character, but stealth code KP is incredibly powerful. Being able to stealth up to enemies and just raw slam gives alternate entries to a fight and surprise hooks when enemies are in sneak. KP can also slot into any team comp. You can dive with slam and ult, heal with slam and pull, or prioritize picks to create 3v4 situations. His versatility makes him a strong asset when used correctly. However, if you do miss a hook, you're going to be doing the L sit against enemies from range, as you don't have any poking tools or really are a ranged threat. Moving on to the characters that I would start to be wary of as a new player. Don't let me discourage you. I'm not saying you shouldn't pick these characters. In fact, if you're the type of person that retains information well, I think Celeste and Oath are two hunters you should main. They require game knowledge that you'll pick up through experience, and you can really accelerate your learning of this game with them. Let's start with Celeste. Celeste is a control mage that likes to manipulate spaces and direct enemies to an area. Literally all her abilities can be used to direct the flow of a fight. So let's get into why she fits into the game knowledge category. The obvious is her wall ability. ability. Celeste can send out a wall that blocks enemy abilities in her path. It doesn't have a ton of HP, but with good timing, you can eat a major cooldown such as an Oath ultimate. It's one thing to reactively put up the wall when you see an enemy about to engage, and another to understand how to manipulate enemy position though. Celeste players need a good understanding of terrain they're fighting in. In a wide open area, her ultimate can be easy to get out of if she's diving with it. However, if the area is too congested, enemies can use trees and structures to hide behind to avoid the damage and stun. You'll want to angle your shift dash to get to an area where you force enemies to retreat in the direction that your team can capitalize on. It's not an easy skill, I know, but sectioning off an area for a team follow-up is more reliable than trying to get a 4-man ult without the assistance of a Zeph or a Void. This ultimate does double up as an anti-dive button. For enemies looking to dive you or your carries, you can pop it on your own backline to help heal. This is also a great use as anyone committing to trying to get the kill on your ally will at least be stunned after they get their knock. The biggest thing you have to be careful of is getting your ult baited. As teams get better, they'll be better at trying to force out your ultimate on bait engages and disengaging to burn the cooldown. And we also have Oath, and despite being a big shield guy, he's not too much different from Celeste. Oath also requires game knowledge due to his shield not being a big savior button as expected. The shield gets shredded easily, especially without empowerment. Instead of blocking everything and walking up, you'll want to make sure you block big cooldowns and important abilities. This could be another Oath ultimate, Felix's ult engage, Bishop launch, Kingpin hook. You'll need to learn what you should prioritize and what you shouldn't, and how you can play around it. Recently, I just learned that Oath's heal is a neutral heal, meaning that it heals enemies as well as ally. I can't imagine this is common knowledge amongst newer players, as why would you even be able to heal enemies anyway? I didn't include him in the screw your teammates over category, but let's talk about this heal a little bit. Oath in alpha testing was considered a protector like Zeph and the Luna, and was recently changed to a frontline in beta. His heal heals himself, allies, enemies, and restores his shield health. It comes out of his hammer, so it can be used on top of his health to use while moving, or you can throw the hammer and the heal will come out of the thrown position. It's a heal on the ground, so even if you recall the hammer, it will still heal at the location. I haven't found too many uses on why you'd rather heal at a location rather than on top of yourself, but if you're not keeping track of where your hammer position is, you can not only waste the heal, but it'll also burn the cooldown and heal enemies. I guess when you'd want to use this is if you have a knocked teammate. If you can't get over and stand on their wisp, you can throw the hammer over to them and then heal on top of their wisp, and that'll start the revive. There's also a way to self-revive your own wisp when you heal, but that's a more advanced topic and we're still working on beginner's mechanic. What I will say is that you can use Oath to block characters in corners and against the walls. Look for wall stuns with your melee knockback left mouse buttons, and when you trap them in a corner, hold your shield up so they can't get out while your teammates pound them flat. While this strategy works really well on isolated targets, you need to be careful that you're not taking back shots from the enemy team. Oath takes double damage from behind when his shield is out, so make sure you don't get lit up. And the final category is hunters that require mechanics. These hunters are going to need muscle memory to be effective. They require split-second decisions, commitment to a fight, and often get punished for not playing optimally. They're high risk, high reward, and if you want people to think you're really nice at the game, you want to pick up Brawl, Jewel, Shiv, and Void. Let's start off with what I think is the easiest of the mechanical characters, Brawl. Brawl is a melee character that commits to a fight and relies on his vamp and anti-healing to take down his target. If you want a 1v4 character, this is the one. As a melee character, you really only have the choice to dive. If you're playing Brawl as a peeler to help your other carries hit targets, you're better off with a different character. You gotta get in there and send it. Brawl is equipped with many offensive tools, having multiple abilities on his left and right click. He can also slingshot himself in with his tether, and he uses dashes that also chain with attacks. Timing is everything with this character. After successfully picking your moment to dive in, preferably when the enemy has no dashes to get away, you'll want to stick to one target if possible. You'll want to constantly be attacking, and once you're about to eat a big peeling tool from a character, pop your ult to go invulnerable and gain some health back. Timing to get in, timing on your abilities, that's the hardest part of this character, as well as fighting in open areas where you can't tether the walls. This is probably the more extensive version of Jhin, where you'll have to look for flanks and ways to stealth and use your momentum to get to backlines. Next up is Jewel and Shiv, and I'm going to talk about them together. I was debating whether Jewel or Shiv was the easier character to play, but I think they're both very similar in difficulty. I just think the nature of Jewel's reset versus Shiv's reset makes her slightly more forgiving. You can't half-ass these two characters. If you want to play the back and forth game of thinking you can fight or backing out, these aren't the characters for that. You need to be in there doing damage and relying on your mechanical skill to dodge abilities. The biggest weakness to these characters is 1, not finding a way in, and B, not committing to your fight. To get into a fight, you won't want to enter a fight from a straight on position. Look for flanks on isolated targets if possible. The reason why I think Jewel is a little bit more forgiving is because it's a lot easier to hit your shift and get the reset to shift out than it is to land empowered left clicks with shiv. As Jewel, your ult can also be used as an escape button if needed, as it goes over walls. She's a little bit more conditional, but compared to Shiv's dagger, I think she's a little bit more reliable. The last character we have is Void, and to me Void is the hardest character in the game. He's also the last character on this list that can screw your team over, and this one in a big way. Void requires positional prowess, as he's the only character whose shift dash isn't an immediate dash. Let's talk about it. Void's shift is a teleport that transports players at his location with players at a targeted area. Because of this, he has to play ultra safe, as the swap has a cast time, and he has to make use of this swap to get over walls and not just to open space next to him. This means if you get jumped on, you won't be able to dash away from divers. It also means that if any of your teammates are standing near you, they'll also be transported as well as enemies. There's a ton of skill expression in this ability with what you can do with it. You can create cool combos with something like a Celeste where she ults in a safe location, blind to enemy team. Void uses his shift, and then suddenly there's a Celeste ult taking on the enemy team's forehead. And that's just the surface of the character. While risky, if you're able to get a flank on the enemy team with Void, you can use the swap to kidnap an enemy back into your team. While the skill expression is high, the ceiling is even higher. His left and right clicks are both pretty straightforward. Projectiles that either slow on the left mouse button or stun on the right mouse button. His Q creates a bomb at a target location. This does damage based on charge time, so you need to be patient waiting for the right moment. This effect grounds enemies and is good setup for hitting your ultimate. If you played any amounts of Supervive against a Void, you'll probably know the frustration of getting trapped in his ultimate. It's a vortex that stuns and pulls people to the center, rendering you helpless and getting deleted by his other abilities. This ability is fantastic in small spaces, which goes well with his shift ability. Using your shift to escape to get to different terrain, higher ground, or over walls. You don't typically want to play out in the open, as it'll be harder to hit this spell. The double-edged sword is that it'll be easier to engage on him. That's the challenge of this character. You get jumped on and pulled and stunned and probably die repeatedly on this character. You'll screw your team over, but getting good at this character means that you'll be an incredibly strong asset to any team comp. And that's all the characters in Supervive so far, but we're not done just yet. I want to talk about why you might want to stick to one character as you learn the game. At its core, the best way to learn anything is by simplifying the game to one character. The less time you spend thinking about what that character has to do in a fight, the more time you can absorb what's happening in game. Playing one character over and over can get kind of boring. If you're someone who's susceptible to repetitiveness, I recommend sticking to at least one archetype of character. Going from a diver like Bishop to a controller like Void is much tougher than going from a Luna to Zeph. Once you start to build muscle memory for that character, each game becomes more consistent. You have a plan of what you want to do and know the strengths and limitations of that character and can play within them. And as I talked about in my previous video, making each game consistent is how I got out of bronze and got to gold in just a few days. Eventually, these skills will transfer to more characters when you try them. Supervive abilities are pretty linear across all characters. Every character has a left click attack, a right click that falls in line with the character identity, some type of movement spell on shift, role defining ability on Q, and an ultimate. Even playing against other characters, you'll start to understand which ability is which and learning timing windows when big spells are down. Full transparency though, my guides won't make you rank 1. There's plenty of top players deep dive guides for that. Sometimes high elo players overlook the little things that aren't common knowledge to a player. They prioritize optimizing every action you make while you don't have the muscle memory to learn those steps yet. As a gold player, hi, editor Levi here. I was a gold player when I started writing the script. I'm currently pushing Diamond 4, but it's still not a top player. You get the idea. The point is, I'm learning alongside you. I focus on breaking down concepts to help you understand Supervive and build confidence so you don't feel like you're holding your team back. It feels awful being the weakest link of a team, and I don't want that for you. Picking the right main is key to feeling confident in your gameplay. When you're comfortable with your character, you can focus on building mechanics and learning the macro parts of Supervive. Just as important is learning how to get in the mindset of playing though. You'll need to be able to differentiate between what is good practice and what is more practice, as well as avoiding tilt when games go bad. Click or tap the screen now and you'll be taken to my bronze to gold video, showcasing how I got into the right mindset for improving and becoming better at Supervive.